Welcome to this episode of Be Your Greatest Asset, the wellbeing podcast for working mums and mums in business who are ready to get out of the daily grind and who know that there's more to life and just want to live life. Prioritize self-care, prioritize well-being, find time for yourself for the things that you never find time for. And so you have a much more fulfilled life and joyful life in all areas. So today I'm really happy to introduce Emma. Emma, we're going to be talking today about how to support your children and yourself with self-care. So it's that $1 million question, like how do you introduce self-care into your day? So a very big welcome to you, Emma. Would you like to introduce yourself in more detail?
Yes, thank you so much. So I am a self-care and motherhood coach and educator. Mum to a 6-year-old, just 6, which is quite scary, really. She's now 6. As well as being a coach for mums, I'm also a full-time teacher for 16 plus. So another interesting, I guess, time in our children's lives. Yeah, I guess that's sort of me in a nutshell. But what I'm really passionate about is helping mums to feel less overwhelmed and to find more balance and clarity in their lives. So, as you've just said, so that they can thrive and live the life that they really want to.
Absolutely. And that is the question, like, how do we thrive? How do we start? Where do we start with self-care? This is a topic that's I'm so passionate about. I mean, we are very aligned in what we do.
Yeah,
I support
definitely.
mums, busy mums with overwhelm, working mums. Yeah, helping you find that balance as well, because that is the thing that all mums want, is that work-life balance, whatever that looks like for you. So where do we start? Let's start at the beginning. What would you say?
Oh gosh. So it's such a big question, isn't it? And it is also absolutely heaped in pressure and expectation, isn't it? Whether that's expectation from society or the expectation that we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
Because of, we want that life which is calm, lots of balance, lots of time for us, those happy moments, less of those tantrums. That's the kind of life that is that kind of ideal motherhood, isn't it? That, baby kids sleep through all night and etc that, and that isn't real motherhood, is it? That isn't real life. That's that kind of glossy, lovely, thing that is maybe pictured as this is what it should be, and actually generally not what it looks like, which is absolutely more okay.
Yeah.
And I think, it really starts with not lowering our expectations at all, but really looking at what we're expecting of ourselves.
Yeah.
Because when we think about self-care, actually when we think about anything in motherhood, or if we're running a business, it's not about adding more to our to-do list or more to life, because life is busy, life can be stressful. There are times when we are going to be overwhelmed, where the week is possibly full of absolutely loads of things happening, whether that's stuff with your children, after school club, parties, events, whatever, plus what might be happening in your life, in your business, in partners, friends, And so for me, when I think about self-care and how I might best support myself, it's about doing it in a way that works with where I am right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if we look at it from that perspective, like how actually more fulfilling and how kind of removing of that kind of barrier is that, it's so much more freeing, that actually what can I do right now and what is achievable. So I think also coming from a place of actually, we have to spend time to build up those habits. It doesn't just happen overnight.
Yeah.
Like it's not. And I've been trying to, so, as coaches, we were talking about it before, isn't it? It's dead easy to like say this stuff, but then actually practice what you preach is something else in itself often.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been trying to, instill more self-care practices, knowing that actually, I have a pattern of I'll work, and then I'll hit burnout. And that is a pattern of behavior that is something that I'm trying to work to. Actually, that isn't how I want to live my life. And it's definitely not what I want to model for my daughter at all.
Yeah.
And so I've really had to learn how to rest.
Yeah. I
Which
think
is
that's the key, I think, is
a big
that
thing,
the
isn't
mums
it?
that I work with and the mums in my Facebook community and people I speak to, I can't rest. Even like years and years in holistic therapies, um, predominantly in massage, and people are like, I can't
Mm-hmm.
relax. I'm really rubbish at relaxing. I was like, well, actually, you can relax. You have to give yourself
Mm-hmm.
permission to relax.
Mm-hmm.
And you do definitely have to learn. It's something you have to learn. And I love that you said there about it's a habit.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start really small. You have to literally just make that choice, that
Mm-hmm.
commitment, and it builds. And I I actually, like, years in therapies, I practiced, well, I didn't practice what I preach. I did to a point,
Mm-hmm.
but I was so good. I still am, but so good at that, in a totally non-arrogant way. That I'm so good. Yeah, at giving my clients home care advice and helping them and like giving them, tips and whatnot. But did I do it myself?
Mm-hmm.
And it did get to the point where I burned out, like completely burned out. There was so much
Mm-hmm.
going on. Had a young baby. We were doing house renovations. We fell out massively with our neighbours. This, that, and the other, and I just literally crashed and burned to the floor. I just remember that day where I just literally just couldn't take any more, and I did need professional help.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a choice in that moment. It's like, I need to rebuild my nervous system here. My nerves are so
Mm-hmm.
frayed. But the thing is, I think with us is that we want it to become habit before we get to that
Mm-hmm.
point. So actually starting to make those habits, like, I'm still learning now. This is 6-7 years further down the line, and I have got it down to a fine art. However, there are still challenges that come every day. Like I was just telling you about, like, I've had to clear up an exploding light bulb this evening. Actually, my son hit it with a pillow, and it just literally shattered all over his bedroom floor as I was putting washing up, as I was trying to cook dinner because I knew I was coming on the podcast. And yeah. So how do we model that? How do we start, and how do we model this then to our children?
So I think firstly it's about giving yourself permission that
Yeah.
I can do this, or I can make 5 minutes for that. So if we're thinking about an example of a self-care practice, perhaps we're thinking about journaling, and just as an example, and it might be that actually it's something that you do maybe when you get you drop your kids off at school, so you do it on the school run, maybe before they get out of the car, or before you drive off after you've dropped them off, or wherever it is that you're going, maybe to work, maybe back home, whatever it is. But actually you take that time in that time that you've already got. Does that make sense? That actually, like,
Yeah.
it's so that if we're doing it self-care in that sort of way, that actually, okay, well, I've arrived at school 10 minutes early, I'm just going to sit, I'm not going to scroll on Instagram, I'm not going to do, because actually if you've got time, and this was something that I was listening to the other day, actually, if you've got time to scroll on Instagram, you've got time to do whatever else it
Yeah.
is that perhaps you could be doing with that time. That's not to say that scrolling on Instagram, there's anything wrong with that. It's how you use that time.
Yeah.
And for example, if you did that journaling practice every day or every other day as you dropped or picked the kids up after school, like those marginal gains of starting to build that habit every day, every other day, you'll start to notice the difference. I think also with that, the more that you start to notice the difference, the people around you will also start to notice the difference too.
Yeah. And it makes you feel more confident
Yes,
to actually keep going. It makes you feel more motivated, doesn't it?
definitely. and not giving up then after, say, you miss a day or you miss 2 days because life happens.
Mm.
Something, something got in the way. Well, actually, it doesn't mean that you can't start again
Mm.
and then continue. Okay, you stopped again for a couple of days. Okay, well, that's fine. Let's start again.
Yeah.
And the more you do that and don't give up, it's the same as if, our kid's practicing to do something and they're like, it's too hard. I'm going to give up. I'm not going to do it anymore. And as a parent, often will come at face, well, you've just done really well. Like, keep going. It takes practice. You've got to learn. And that's what self-care is all about. You're learning, you're practicing, you're having a go. And actually using that kind of the experience of self-care practices as, I guess, more of an experiment. And I was talking about this with a client recently, and she's got 3 kids. Life is super busy.
Mm.
And there's that fear of actually maybe not picking the right thing in
Yeah.
terms of a self-care practice. That actually, if I do this and it doesn't fill up my cup, then what? Or what if I do it and I invest all this, whatever, and then I don't like it or it doesn't work?
That's
If
interesting.
you don't try, how are you going to know? And if we come at it from a place of actually, well, I'm just being curious, it's an experiment, let's see what happens. Like, how much more freeing is that to actually be like, I'm just going to see, like, if it doesn't work, so much choice there, and actually I'll just try something else another day. And it's coming at it from a different space, isn't it? The same as if your kid's struggling with a problem, let's look at it from this perspective, from that perspective. We can look at self-care the same, from the same sort of, space.
I think we're so good at, encouraging our children, like, come and try again, try again. Like, don't worry,
Yeah.
you'll get it next time, or when they take their first steps, or, when they're
Mm-hmm.
struggling with, like you say, with the, I don't know, homework or whatever, with a problem, they're having friends problems at school,
Mm-hmm.
help them. Um, but I feel like, well, I certainly used to be my own worst enemy. Like, and you mentioned at the beginning about expectations. And one thing my mum used
Mm-hmm.
to say to me all the time was, your expectations are too high on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you wouldn't say to a friend, oh, just give up.
No.
Like, just give up. But at the same time, it's like, it is like being curious about how to
Mm-hmm.
make the change and finding what works for you. And
Yeah.
I love that just use it, like, play with it like an experiment.
Yeah.
And it's that question, like, well, what if it doesn't work? But what if it does? What
Yes.
if okay, it's a gamble, but what if the gamble pays off?
Mm-hmm.
It could, it's either it changes your life or you learn from it.
Yeah.
There's no
And
failure.
that's no, and it's that thing, isn't it? Like, the only thing that you are going to get as an assurance from that is some feedback in terms of, well, this is good or this isn't good, and this is why, and that's why. And and I think that modeling of being curious, like, okay, well, I'm just going to try and I'm going to experiment. And it's that playfulness, as you just said, isn't it? That actually we can learn so much from how our children are,
Yeah.
in terms of that, they will have a go.
Yeah,
If they fall over, they get back up again. In
exactly.
terms of, when they're learning to walk, when they're, experimenting with things, when they go to a lesson, a dance lesson or whatever. And I say that because my daughter, she goes to dance lessons, and I'm sure that she finds it hard. Like, I can see it in her face when I go to a performance. She's really trying to remember those, the moves, but actually she keeps going with it. She might not get it right all the time, but actually she keeps going. And all of that learning comes from that, doesn't it? In terms of,
Yeah.
I might make a mistake, or it might go a little bit wrong. Oh, actually, this time I can try this, and that might work better. And I think it's that acceptance. Actually, we are still learning. Like, we are human. We don't know everything, and we are still learning. And our lives change on a day-to-day basis. So something that works for us on a Monday might not work on a Wednesday, because the day's different. We feel different. What we need in that day is different. But actually being curious about that and be like, well, what do I actually need right now? And sitting with that, especially if we can't actually work out what it is that we need, because often that can be a thing in itself as well, can't it? That life is so busy, we feel so overwhelmed that actually really stripping it back to what we do actually need, that can often be a challenge in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think sometimes, taking that time,
Mm-hmm.
just experimenting with learning to rest, for example, like an exercise I do with my clients is just set your timer for 2 minutes and sit in stillness,
Mm-hmm.
just 2 minutes. And then you can build on that. And what we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to do through this self-care is just build and build and build and
Mm-hmm.
build. Look at life, like mindset change, look at life as a journey,
Mm-hmm.
not as a destination. Death is where we're heading, but it's a journey. But it
Yeah.
sounds really morbid, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I always say, at the end of the day, like, I want to know that I've done everything in my power to optimize my
Mm-hmm.
whole life when I get to that point. Like, it's a journey, and that's not a destination. um and we do forget our needs as
Mm-hmm.
mums, but the best way, I think, is to actually take that step back, and then it opens your eyes, it reduces that mental fatigue, um it calms your nervous system
Mm-hmm.
down, you just stop that frenzied
Mm-hmm.
patterns of self-sabotage
Yeah,
and worst enemy. And it is so important to be able to just start to integrate whatever it is and try and create new
definitely.
routines and habits.
And I think that can really help to ground you in that motherhood journey as well.
Yeah.
To really kind of put those, those solid foundations there in terms of like, I am allowed to rest.
Mm. Yeah.
There is that permission there. And that, I can and I am allowed to figure out what I need. And as you just said, like actually just sitting in silence and just breathing, being present, can bring so much to the forefront, can't it? That
Yeah.
just in that, couple of minutes and building on that and really noticing those marginal gains as those habits start to build, as you start to notice changes in how you're feeling, maybe how you're responding to certain situations, and ultimately then how your children and those around you are responding as well.
Yeah.
um
I'll give an example here because it's just really fresh in my mind. I was really proud of my husband the other day because he is somebody, like most of us, a lot of us are, like I used to be, where constantly on the go, always
mm-hmm.
doing something. And so I took the boys out to the supermarket. I left him here. He was doing some DIY. And I said to him, rest when we're out because you've been out this all day. And when I got home, he was actually sat down with a beer watching TV. And that is something that
Yeah.
has taken him a very long time to get to the point
Mm-hmm.
where he's like, right, I am actually allowed to give myself permission to rest.
Mm-hmm.
So by me role modeling this to my
Mm-hmm.
whole family, everybody's benefiting from it.
Yeah.
And he is so much calmer as well. Like he's been really stressed at work. Um, well, he was actually commuting basically between Dorset and Scotland for 3 months, and he was and he started a new job, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's amazing. Like you do actually notice the shifts in the people around you. So that
Mm-hmm.
is a really real recent example
Mm-hmm.
in my family. Um, my boys, for example, like you've just mentioned your daughter with her dancing. Um, but I'm sure that like she's trying, but you're influencing her
Yeah.
as well because you're role modeling this. And an example for me with my children is that they've had to learn for, it's like a Scottish poetry week or something.
Mm-hmm.
I sound really bad now that I don't know the, the official name. I did read the letter, but that's fine. I don't need to know. I know that they did the homework, so they had to learn a poem, and it was literally, it looked like it was in a foreign language. It's English, but they're written in, is Robert Burns and another
Mm-hmm.
one another poet, and it was written in the Scottish pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, it was so hard to learn. And they did it. And they did it in Scottish accents. Although, you never know, it might offend the Scottish people, but but I was really proud of them. But they kept going, they kept persisting. And with my kind of calming influence on them, we've had tears and all sorts over this. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. And because of my mindset and my calm
Mm-hmm.
and everything, we can help them through as mums. um yeah, how else can we support our children through our self-care? What else are the benefits, what other benefits are there of our self-care on children?
I think before I answer that question, although I think
Yeah.
it kind of relates, just want to pick up on something else you said about that,
Mm.
the praise of, you know, when our kids do something really well
Mm.
and they've gone through that journey and they've practiced and we've had that kind of like, I can't do it and all that, and then eventually they get to that point where actually they can do it and you're so proud of them because they've done so well. Like that feeling, like if for the people who are listening, like just take a moment to think about something like that and how proud you were, and let all that kind of emotion like fill up inside. Imagine how we would feel if we praised ourselves for that journey of self-care and those marginal gains.
Yeah, totally.
And
I had
it,
a feeling you were going to go down. Yeah.
yeah,
So true. It's so true. And we don't celebrate ourselves enough.
no.
We just keep on going through the motions on
Mm-hmm.
autopilot, blinkered, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the
Yeah,
next. Yeah. And
but
I think as well, sorry, were you going to say
it's
something?
okay. You go.
I think as well, like I know people, and I've worked with mums who are almost scared to stop
Mm-hmm.
because of it's going to, of what it might trigger, of what it might bring up, and like
Mm-hmm.
the emotions that it might bring up. Like it's like by keeping busy,
Mm-hmm.
we're shoving down the stress and the overwhelm and the anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not allowing ourselves to process the negative, or the raw kind of
Mm-hmm.
emotions that we're feeling. And by staying in that state of busy, we're actually
Mm-hmm.
protecting ourselves from feeling those things that we don't want to feel. And I feel that we need to start to relax, to
Mm-hmm.
learn to rest, in order to learn to process those emotions, to actually feel those emotions, because then it's going to help our children to
Definitely.
process their emotions.
Yeah.
These tears that we had, yesterday with
Mm-hmm.
these poems. It's like, okay, it's okay. Like, and it's actually giving
Mm-hmm.
yourself the space to cry, rather than
Mm-hmm.
going, I can't cry, because society
Yeah.
won't let me cry. um, and it is thinking you have to be positive all the time, and there's something wrong with you
Mm-hmm.
if you don't feel happy all the time. Well, that's bullshit, because there you go, I swore. because because you're only human,
Mm-hmm.
and with life's challenges, like, it's natural you're not going to feel happy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be things.
Really,
So
I think it's important to remember that you can't have, and I was in a session today with some students, they were talking about resilience, and like you can't just have happiness, like sadness comes alongside of that, and sometimes actually the two things are really intertwined,
yeah,
and we might feel, as the same as our children, like if we think about kids' emotions and when they have a tantrum, like that's what's happening, isn't it? They're so overwhelmed with the emotion that actually they can't often articulate
yeah.
what actually it is that is going on for them. Those emotions get mixed up, don't they? And then we're not quite sure, and that comes back to what we were saying earlier about perhaps not knowing what you need, because actually you can't pinpoint actually what it is that you're maybe struggling with at that time.
Yeah.
And I think that emotional regulation it's part of that self-care, in terms of that healthcare and being proactive and how we look after our mind body system, but then also how we model that for our children too, and so that they're not in that kind of like heightened state when they are feeling upset, when they are feeling anxious. And me and my daughter, so she does struggle with her emotions and she does get quite upset, and she gets herself quite worked up. And we've started doing some breathing exercises, and it was a case of me going through it, going around on my hand, like breathe in, breathe out. And we've done that for a couple of months, and then she came to me the other day and she was like, Mummy, I need to do it. And she did it herself. She sat with me and did it, but she was able to do it herself. And that consistent modeling and repetition to a certain, because that's how we build those habits. For me, that also forms part of that self-care, because in modeling how we emotionally regulate in a way that is practical and makes sense to our children, that is age appropriate, is kind of where they're able to understand from, is so important to helping them actually, okay, well, this is what I need because this is what's happening. They might not be able to understand fully the emotion, but actually this is what I can do to get myself back to a calm, safe space to then move forward with whatever it is that we need to take action with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I feel like as a mother, we have a responsibility for our self-care. We need to squash this idea that self-care is selfish and that we must put everyone else before our own needs, because we're actually just doing everyone else a disservice, as Emma and I have just as we've just highlighted with the children and my husband. And if you didn't practice this, if you didn't know this stuff, if you hadn't learned it, you wouldn't be able to teach your daughter the high five. I don't know what you call it, but I call it the high five breath. I think it's
We'd actually give it a name, but she knows what she's doing, so that's good.
Exactly. And that's because that's one I do with my boys as well. It's just a really simple one. And or even just like breathing, like people don't, if they're upset at school or stressed at school or whatever, then they can just breathe and move their fingers and stuff, and people don't even need to know that they're doing it, but they know how to do these things when you're not even around. And yeah, I just feel so passionate about if we don't know it as mums or as parents, that how can we possibly teach our children this, and how can we then break the cycle of stress and overwhelm and anxiety in this fast-paced, busy world? How can we expect our children to, I mean, I don't want my boys to feel stressed and fearful and living in lack and all of this stuff. I want them to really, really live their happiest lives. They might turn around when they're later on and go, Mum, you were really rubbish. You were talking absolute rubbish all these years. They might. And I had this exact conversation with my mum last week, actually. And she said, no, I don't think they're going to say that. They might, and that is a fear of mine. Like, Mum, I'm advocating all this self-care and this, that, and the other to help my children as well. And I know that they will turn around and say, when I'm a parent, I'm going to do things differently. And that's fine. Because I've certainly done things differently from my parents. But yeah, I just feel like, we're only doing our best in this moment. And you and I both believe that we need to care for ourselves in order to help our children and others.
Definitely. And I think, part of that is remembering that, even if we don't know how to do those things right now, we can learn how to do them. And that can also be in conjunction with our children. Like, self-care doesn't need to be separate to our children or our partner. Like, it can be things that we do with them as well. Turning off the TV, maybe putting a bit of chill music on, and maybe sitting and do some colouring or reading a book or whatever. Me and Bella had the most beautiful half an hour the other Sunday evening where a partner was cooking tea, so he wasn't in the room, and we turned the TV off and we literally sat there for half an hour and just coloured together.
Nice.
And we talked a little bit, and we talked about the colours that we were choosing, and it was so beautiful because we were both present with each other. It was so calming, so relaxing, and actually just that half an hour really filled up that energy for me and for her as well. I think I'm hoping, I'm presuming that it did, because she enjoyed it and asked to do it again. That really was definitely what we both needed after a really busy weekend. She'd come back from her dad, so we hadn't seen each other much, and it was just that kind of half an hour before we had tea, and then before kind of the bedtime routine, where we were just really present with each other. And I think that's really key. If we think about self-care, it's about being present, whether it's with ourselves or whether it's with other people around us. And that's really key.
Yeah, definitely. And you say, I love that you say about integrating other people into your self-care.
Yeah.
So for example, like we've just, as a family, we've just sat around the dinner table, we've had a chat.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a priority for us. It's important to my husband and I that
Mm-hmm.
we do connect with the boys. Like we've been a bit sloppy recently and had a few TV dinners, but that's just because we've been ill and stuff over Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But we've always, up until recently, sort of sat around the table and we have a
Mm-hmm.
chat. And I just said, so what are you most happy about today? Like what's been your best bit of today? Or it's that you're carrying the washing through to
Mm-hmm.
to put the washing away, and my son stops me, for example, and he's like, Mom, talking about whatever, and it's actually stopping and going, you know what, this washing, it's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I can give my son a couple of minutes of my time here,
Mm-hmm.
and that connection time
Mm-hmm.
there, rather than being like, in a minute, hang on,
Yeah.
I'll just do this, because in my experience that in a minute never comes.
No.
Like it's sort of like, in a minute, later, oh, let me just do this, just one last
Mm-hmm.
job, and then before you know it, the day's gone and
It
you've
is. And I
missed
think
those opportunities.
definitely, I think it's really interesting because Bella now says to me, Mummy, stop with jobs. Like, we're doing this instead. Or like, she'll help for a bit. And then she says, Mummy, the jobs are boring.
Yeah,
Can we go and do?
yeah, yeah. It's like you need to like kind of a bit of a couple of jobs and then child
And
time,
then stop.
and
Yeah.
then yeah, yeah, and actually just keep connected
I
to
think
people who are important to you.
definitely. And I think it's good that also she's really good at holding me accountable to
Yeah,
not rushing around, to sitting down. And that's also, I think, important, like having that accountability.
Mum, put your phone down.
Yeah.
Put your phone down. and it's my children who've taught me boundaries around my phone, because
Mm-hmm.
they've been so like open about things, like
Mm-hmm.
because it is easy to scroll, we're all
It
doing
is
a bit
so
deep.
easy.
It's like, yeah, okay, so I now leave my phone generally in a different room from where I am with the
Mm-hmm.
boys, so I'm not constantly on it. Yeah, I don't always get it right, but I don't have my phone in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
I keep it outside the bedroom and have an alarm clock, so I'm not tempted to scroll first thing in the morning, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm always going on at my son about, get off your phone, get off your phone. And then it's like, oh, actually, they're telling me to get off my phone too.
Mm-hmm.
So, pot kettle black. I actually need to take notice of this. So we do learn so much from our children,
We
and it is
do.
like a constant kind of exchange of
Mm-hmm.
wisdom.
Definitely. And I think that's, they teach us so much, don't they? I shared on Instagram, I shared it a few times, but actually, motherhood is just as much about watching our children grow as it is about watching us grow as well. And
Yeah.
that kind of whole, we do learn so much. Bella has taught me so much. And I doubt that I would be where I am now if it wasn't from that kind of learning that she's taught me. And she's 6, and that's, I think it does give you a whole different perspective. But knowing that it's a two-way thing, you're teaching them and they're learning from you, but also you can take so much learning from them as well.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think as well, when they're young, they are free
Mm-hmm.
from that societal conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
from that expectation and feeling judged and all of
Mm-hmm.
that we now have on us,
Mm-hmm.
that coaches, myself and you, like, and others, are trying to help people unlearn, that we've had to unlearn
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, uncondition ourselves. And it's being able to sort of uncondition ourselves quickly enough that we don't pass our
Mm-hmm.
thoughts and opinions onto our children.
Mm-hmm.
Well, try and keep them pure, which I know you could say I've failed with my eldest son because he's 11, but I haven't failed, because as I've said, we've said, it's all about doing your best, and it's, you're constantly learning and growing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I'm now helping my son with is helping him unlearn what I've taught him that I know I don't want him to know, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
um
definitely.
yeah, some unwelcome like confidence issues and things like that. So yeah, it's a huge, wow, self-care is a massive topic.
It
We
is.
could talk for hours. I know I said that we could, didn't I? um,
Yep.
but we'll stop there, and I'd love you to share some more about your work and how people can actually get in touch with you and work with you. I'll put your contact details in the show notes. If you'd like to share a little bit more about what you're up to at the moment.
Amazing, thank you. So in line with kind of exactly what we've been saying tonight in terms of how busy life is and how, actually finding that time can be quite difficult. I am putting together, and there are already a couple available, some self-paced courses that are very much like coming to a coaching live workshop, and they all have accountability hours attached. You can kind of get that, more face-to-face time, without it kind of being, it has to be done in this hour, and which can be really difficult when the kids won't go to sleep or whatever else has happened during the day. So actually just being able to kind of do it as and when, is something that I'm really working towards. So there are a couple already, and a couple more that will be coming in February half term. So the first one that's available is the Review and Reflect Your 2023 workshop, which is already live, ready if people are ready to kind of look at where they've been in this past year, and then kind of what they want to take into next year, what they want to let go of, what they want to continue. And also I'm offering some one-to-one coaching sessions and lots of resources over on the website and on the podcast as well.
Let's just recap here on the benefits of coaching.
Oh yes, that's
how do you feel it benefits your clients?
oh gosh. So actually what a client said to me recently, so she's a client that I've been working with for a couple of months. She was talking about how I will hold her accountable, but in a calm and really supportive way, in terms of, I think coaching is very much, especially in terms of how I work with my clients, in terms of you're there in that supportive capacity, you're there to support your clients in terms of them taking action and being kind of, supporting them and being accountable to that. And also very much about letting clients get to the place that they want to, in terms of what's happening, that they're really aligned with, and letting them work out the answers for themselves. So coaching with me, as I'm sure it is with you as well, is very much about letting them have that space to work towards those answers, have some really clear kind of goals, that kind of crystal clear clarity in terms of where they want to get to, and then set in some really achievable ways that you can get there, that might change as you work through that coaching sessions, but actually having that kind of space to have those discussions, really dig deep, and then take action.
Definitely. Yeah. I think the thing is we've all got the answers inside us.
We
and
definitely have.
coach doesn't know what it is that's best for you. Coach doesn't know what it is you want, what you dream of, what keeps you awake at night because you're worried about something, but we can help pull you out of it. It's like we can see the potential in you, and we can help you find the potential within you and actually then
Definitely.
put it into action in baby steps. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be, I said the other day, it doesn't have to be that you're living in a 2-bedroom house now and your dream is to live on a £1 million beach property or go on that really expensive holiday somewhere, but it's just practicing. Again, we were saying about practicing and the little things, and then kind of feeling into what is it like to be that person. What is it like to be that person that I actually want to be, to actually help you see the clarity to move you towards those goals and those dreams.
Yeah.
It's really, really powerful stuff. It's
It
just
really is.
having that friend, that best friend,
Mm-hmm.
best friend, basically. I did joke a few years ago, well, a couple of years ago it probably was, like, I was like, because I was with a one-to-one coach at the time. I've had
Mm-hmm.
lots of coaching. I was with a one-to-one coach today, business coach.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I have to pay these days to get a, a best friend. I got loads and loads and loads of friends, but the thing is, I have such strong dreams that most people around me look at me like completely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're moving to Scotland? No, you never do that. Oh yeah, I did. I did. You want to own land? Yeah, I do. I do now. And I've made it happen. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like everyone, it's like a coach will actually not judge you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Will let you share your wildest dreams.
And then help you get there.
And help you get there. Yeah. And not laugh at you, not smirk at you, not doubt
Mm-hmm.
you, not, you know, not go, yeah, right.
It's like, I think, well, I mean, I've it's in my Instagram bio, but it's having a cheerleader, isn't it? That actually there's
Yeah.
someone there who is cheerleading you on the way and also helping you get there.
Yeah.
However, they're letting you really get clear. It's not what they want for you, it is what you want for you,
Yeah.
which is absolutely key.
And coaching as well. If again you're coached, like, we want you to live your happiest lives because it just
Mm-hmm.
raises the vibe for the whole world. It brings
Mm-hmm.
so much more light in the world. And what better world is there than that for your children?
Definitely.
Start with your self-care. So yeah,
Definitely.
amazing. Um, so do you have any last words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Oh gosh, I think considering everything that we've talked about tonight, I think just a reminder really that you are always learning, and we don't know everything, and so just having that kind of, I'm learning, I can be curious about this, I've got choices with this, is something that I would like to leave as my lasting word for this episode.
Love that. Thank you so much. Well, it's
Thank
been an
you.
absolute pleasure chatting to you tonight, Emma. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
And yeah, I'll put your details in the show notes.
Thank you.
Take care.